Hello and welcome to the Perth Gaming Crew Show. My name is John. Today I've got with me my co-host Johnny and guest Tim. Thanks for joining us today on the show, Tim. How are you?
I'm really well, thank you. Thanks for having me, guys. I've been following the Perth Gaming Crew podcast for a little bit now after I met you both. Very excited to be here today.
Awesome. Yeah, no, we're very excited that you've joined us today. So people of Perth and beyond, we have mentioned before we take guests, and Tim has joined us on today's occasion to talk all about indie games. It's been a little while since we've done a new part on our indie game series, so it's time to do that now. But we're going to cover 3 games each today, so a collection of 9. For those of you who haven't seen the previous episodes, we've covered some of the big ones like Shovel Knight and Hunt Down and Dave the Diver on those. So if your favorite game is missing, it's probably in those, or we might cover it in a future episode. But before we start, one thing we always do with all our guests is ask them what their favorite game of all time is. So Tim, tell us, what's your number 1 hit?
I really love that question, John. It did take me a bit to come up with the final answer, as you saw in that very, very lengthy text message that I sent you. But when reflecting on gaming periods that I really enjoyed the most, and probably where I played the most, was probably in my early 20s when I got Red Dead Redemption. So Red Dead Redemption, just an amazing, amazing, epic storyline. I personally, I think it was what got me across the line to really loving the Western genre. For many years, my dad and as well as my granddad had tried to get me into watching Western films, and I probably went through a spell where I was trying to watch as many of them as possible, but the only one that really stood out to me that I really appreciated was The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. But I think Red Dead Redemption really just sort of helped kickstart a real love for the Western genre. The storyline is just sweeping. It is, it has some very tight gameplay mechanics. I felt that, with the evolution of how open world gaming had really taken place across the Grand Theft Auto series, I felt that they'd perfected it even with Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, but it just seemed to get better and better, as we've already seen with now Red Dead 2, Grand Theft Auto 5, which is just unkillable at this stage. But now with Red Dead Redemption, just thinking about it and how I felt when I played it the first time, I cannot think of any other game in the vast collection that I've had that's really matched the storytelling greatness of that. That is until I probably play Red Dead 2, but I'm kind of holding off on playing that until I don't know when I've got free time, but I kind of don't want it to ruin the love that I have for the original.
Yeah, no, it's an incredibly epic game and one of the greatest of all time. It's probably a good thing that you can't play it straight away to like the sequel, because you almost need that time to let it breathe and just like remember how great it is, and those expectations sit there. I remember playing this on Xbox 360, and it was one of the first games I played online as well on that. And it was kind of funny, just the mechanics around that, where you could shoot like someone else's horse and they'd fly off and they'd be like, where's that coming from? And and for me, it was like an introduction to not just like that Western world, but also like the online kind of just game scene as well, which is quite fun. But that's a mint pick. Absolutely. Johnny, are you into Westerns at all? Does this appeal to you?
I don't mind the occasional Western.
Yeah.
I don't. I'm actually kind of a bit of a tragic for the old John Wayne flicks.
Ah.
But yeah, no, I'm probably more familiar with the Red Dead Redemption 2. I've seen a lot more of that because it's a bit more recent. But obviously the original is very well regarded.
Very cool. Yeah, well, yeah, for those of you who haven't checked out Red Dead Redemption, it's aged well, I think, in many ways, and it was recently ported to Switch and PlayStation. It's kind of everywhere, although there's different versions, so go check it out. I'm sure you could get that on sale or for a relatively cheap price these days. But that's enough of, top tier AAA games. We're going down to the little guy, and we're all about the indies today, often made by 2, 3, 4 people teams. Johnny, love it if you could kick us off with one of your favorite indie games of all time that you think the people of Perth and beyond just have to know about?
Certainly, Jono, and I'm going to take you from the Old West to the shopping malls of the 1990s.
So glamorous.
Yeah, and this little gem from 2020, um, which brought to life the work of indie filmmaker of the 90s, Kevin Smith, to the video game scene, and that is, of course, Jay and Silent Bob Mall Brawl. Now, this is an 8-bit beat 'em up developed by Interabang Entertainment, which is a California-based developer. There are 9 chapters to play through that feature the characters and environments of Kevin Smith's View Askew universe, particularly drawing heavily on 1995's Mallrats. Amazing, great flick. It's really the love for that flick has kind of grown over the years, even though it didn't get a lot of love back when it first had its first cinematic release. But this game is kind of a bit of a love letter to retro beat 'em ups of the era of your River City Ransoms, Double Dragon. There's a little bit of reference even to like Mega Man and like Battletoads in these 9 chapters that you go through. And it has some really memorable boss fights. For example, very early on, you fight Patrick Swayze on a horse, which is a reference to the Clerks animated series from back in the day. And then there's other characters from the Kevin Smith flicks pop right through the game. Very addictive gameplay. Controls are very simple. I've been playing this with my NES Switch controller. It just seems the most appropriate to play a game like this. The animations are great. I love how the eyes kind of bug out when characters get hit or surprised or anything like that. Yeah, very memorable to reenact a classic scene from the Mallrats film where Jay and Silent Bob beat up the Easter Bunny. Yeah, definitely a retro gem, a retro style gem from an indie developer that's well worth checking out if you want a bit of a laugh.
This looks really cool, Johnny. Like, I remember the Jay and Silent Bob movie, and like just the fact that it's called Mall Brawl has me in giggles already. This looks, very much like River City Ransom, like that particular art style.
Yeah.
Most of all, I think, and like when you mentioned the eyes bugging out, like that little pop and kind of feedback as a player looks like a lot of fun. I wanted to ask you, do you think this game is like a good like brawler in its own right compared to some of the classics, like for those who played Double Dragon, for example, only, or Battletoads, or is it more just a skin and it's more for fans of Jay and Silent Bob?
I think it'll appeal to a lot of people because it's the playability is very, very high. It's just very easy to pick up and play. Like there's only a couple of controls to get the hang of. A few different moves, like you've got like a special move that activates after just sort of button mashing effectively. There's some hold moves and things and throw moves.
Okay, cool. Yep.
But it's really basic. I think you'll get a lot more out of this if you are a fan of the Viewer's universe, because all the references are in there and it's like Easter eggs. Like one of the first things you come across is there's a carpet retailer called Rug Munchers, which is very kind of like Mallrats, like Clerks humor. It's very much made for people who are young, who are maybe teens in the 90s. I think is who it's really made for. But I think anyone can kind of pick up and play it because it's actually a well-made game. And it's a fairly short experience. It's like 9 levels. I do have to call out it has one kind of infuriating kart racing stage, which is almost very much brings back memories of that racing stage in Battletoads, where you just
The speeder bikes.
the speeder bikes, where you're going insanely fast and trying to dodge all the obstacles. So that's one way to sort of exercise your Battletoad demons is to pick up Jay and Silent Bob Mall Brawl.
I think you've just helped a huge audience there, Johnny, because that's most of us who grew up on Battletoads. Tim, are you into the old brawlers at all? Is that something you've gotten into yourself, or does this game appeal to you?
Yeah, this is definitely something that would appeal to me. I had looked at some footage at one point, and there was one character there who reminded me of probably the only character, apart from the main characters of Double Dragon, who I remembered. He kind of looked like a Bobo.
Yeah, that's Adobo. So
Oh,
he's
okay, so it's intentional.
a Bobo with a pretzel head. So, and that I think that level, there's actually that whole level is called Adobo Flow or something like that. Like it's something ridiculous. Yeah, there's lots of little gags. Like there's gags that are referencing not just the Kevin Smith stuff, but referencing other video games. Like one of the bosses, you go through a tunnel like as if you're going to fight a Mega Man boss, but it's actually one of the characters. It's Cockknocker from the Jay and Silent Bob Strikes Back movie, which was famously played by Mark Hamill in that 2000 flick. And you go through a tunnel you fight him as if he was a Mega Man boss, and then he explodes with the white circles like a Mega Man boss. So it's got all these really clever like references to other video games weaved into the Viewersk Universe lore.
That's so cool. Oh, fantastic. It just sounds like a great game for like people who are fans of like the lore and the TV shows, but also brawlers too. And co-op, Johnny, as well. So you can't lose an easy recommendation.
Best way to play this is 2-player mode, like co-op. The single player mode's still fun, and it's got that mechanic where you can switch between Jay and Bob, and so when your energy's running low, you switch to the other. A bit like the NES Turtles game that we love to talk about so much on this show. It's got that mechanic, but it's much more fun if you're playing the two-player mode.
Cool. Oh, very sweet. So that's, Jane, Silent Bob, Mall Brawl, go check it out if that's your jam. Tim, what have we got first up for you? I think it's UFO 50, if I'm correct there.
Yeah,
is that right?
Yeah, that's right, John. I came across this game on some gaming websites. I decided that, I've got a new PC. It's got a 4090 graphics card. So what better way to punish it than by playing some pixelated games?
Yeah, exactly. Test that hard drive.
It's so overpowered for this stuff. But, I really wanted to get this UFO 50 because, from everything that I'd read, it has 50 retro-inspired full games within the collection. It is incredible value for what it is. There's no lengthy sort of introduction or anything. As soon as you load up the game, there's an image of what looks to be someone opening like a storage container. Then after that, you get to a home screen, and there are 50 cartridges to select from. It's a very simple presentation, and as soon as you select one of the games, they've even animated dust being blown off the cartridge, which I thought was a really nice touch. It's such a simple layout, but this really wonderful, design choice that I think really evokes memories of seeing either not just my own video game collection of cartridges growing up, but even friends or relatives. They would have had some games that they'd either bought secondhand, which didn't come with the box, or the box, so you couldn't see the box art, missing manuals and what have you. So it had that nostalgic vibe and I thought it captured it very well, to be honest. So, full disclosure, I haven't actually dusted off all 50 of the games. I think I don't have enough time for that.
Who does?
Yeah, that's it. But it's just amazing to know that it's all there. But there have been a few standouts that I've played. There was, and I'm blanking right now, but there was a game where you play as like a chameleon, and you have to navigate your way through the map. There are all these threats around. So you might get eaten by a toad if seen. So you have to sort of camouflage your way through and find the correct pathway to exit while collecting all the collectibles through the level. That was the game that kind of grabbed me the most. After so many poor attempts at trying to play any of the other games that I'd opened and just failing miserably at all of them, this is the one where I had some success.
That's good. That's good. You do need that like pat on the back feedback from the game to be like, all right, I'm not a terrible gamer. This gigantic PC upgrade is worth something.
I haven't wasted my money.
That's right. That's right. There's got to be something in this collection of 50 games. Yeah,
absolutely. And look, I ended up playing that game and finishing it. And when you finish a game, it'll change the color of the border of the game. This one actually went red. So I looked it up, and when you cherry a game, that's actually one of the higher achievements. So I didn't just complete it, I completed it well, apparently. There are some other games that I've played, and many of them are kind of like, they'll evoke memories of games that you have played in past generations of consoles. There was one that was very much like Windjammers. So it's kind of like a volleyball type game, but viewed from the top down. That's called Bushido Ball. There's a really fun game called Rail Heist, which I've been trying to make my way through, where you have a timer and you have to make your way through the train and complete a heist. That one's been really cool. Every time I play through it, I think that I'm getting that much closer to getting better at it, but then I saw that I haven't actually achieved any of the things that you're supposed to achieve, so I do have to play through that one again. But some really punishing gameplay mechanics, and again, it really stokes that nostalgia, thinking about old games that we've played in the past, and actually like how much more difficult the mechanics were back then. One that it does have, which I think, Johnny, you will enjoy. Actually, all of us would enjoy, because we all love beat 'em ups. There's one called Fist Hell, and it's
call like it what it is.
It's like Double Dragon. It's like Final Fight. There's very much a Streets of Rage type influence in there. Yeah. It has you running through the level while taking on zombies. And some of the animation kind of like I thought, what came to my mind was Zombies Ate My Neighbors or Ghoul Patrol.
That was on the Super Nintendo.
Yeah, those were a couple of favorites from back in the day. But very tight gameplay mechanics can be punishing. Once you've lost all your health, that's it. You're sent back right to the beginning of the level. Again, I didn't have much success with that, but recently I started playing through a little bit more seriously. I was like, no, this game's not going to get the better of me. I'm going to make my way through. So I've managed to make it a couple of more levels up. So yeah, I'm really quite a fan of this package. It's got a huge following. You'll see so many Reddit threads devoted to it, and there are some amazing players out there who have managed to cherry all of the 50 games, which I can't even begin to think how much time that would have taken some of them, but well done to them. Hats off. And like what I really dug about this is that the more that I played, and the more that I failed at getting anywhere through some of the opening stages of some of these games, you really do get the sensation of maybe even finding your old game collection. I'm not sure if you guys have had like the NES or SNES re-releases, but just going back to playing something from back then, you used to be able to beat them, but like now you just don't have the reflexes as much as you did back in the day. Well, at least that's my experience. I just felt that I don't have what it takes, but no, I'm gonna keep giving it a go and see if I can cherry another cartridge later on down the track.
I think those are the days like when you were a kid and you used all your free time to play games, or a young adult at uni going, I should go to class and then I'll play games. And you just commit that 4 hour block to going, I'll fail, but I'll get it, I'll get it, I'll get it, I'll get it. And then you get there and you're like, was it worth it? It was worth it. What's the next game, you know? And like, yeah, those were the days. It looks like a fantastic package, Tim. Like I've had my eye on this and you can see there's like a lot of references to old games like Master Blaster and even a Metroid style game in there, and the Double Dragon games like you mentioned. Do the games, like, do you find the games stand out on their own basis, or is it a bit more like they're very short 5-minute games, just more of a taste tester?
I think that from what I've experienced and from also what I've read online, the games aren't that long in and of themselves. I think that they're possibly just made more difficult so that, you know, when you do finish them, you know, it feels like quite the achievement. And it does sort of echo games from long gone. Like I think I remembered playing Kung Fu on the NES, and that was probably only 8 stages long.
Yep,
and,
very short.
You know, I remembered, you know, feeling such a sense of achievement when I got to level 3, and that's the same sort of feeling I get when being able to progress through some of these games. There's one in particular that kind of reminded me of a mobile game called Doodle Jump. It's called Velgress, and you have to jump. You have to ascend this one level, and each cloud that you jump on will disappear once you've landed on it. So you have to keep going, but then there are these spikes that are sort of traveling up with you, and if you miss a jump, the spikes will get you and it just sends you right down to the bottom. That game, I don't know how many levels there are, but I think it's quite short. But yeah, like just the punishing gameplay overall.
It's cool. No, it's really good to hear. Like, it sounds like there's something for everyone, and the brilliance of this kind of package is that there are gamers like us who grew up in that era with one or more of these games where it evokes those memories. But new gamers can also come and experience a huge package of like, oh, what it was like, you know, if they don't have the Nintendo Switch Online service, or they don't want to buy one or two old style games and find them too hard. This sounds like a pretty good package to get started with. No, it looks really cool. So that's UFO 50, and that was released also relatively recently, I think, on console. So go check that one out. Making a slight pivot to the action platformer genre. So one that I picked, and I'm kind of surprised I didn't pick this in the first couple of like episodes we did in this series. This is my second favorite indie game of all time after The Messenger, which I absolutely adore. This one is not very well known. So it's published by Nicalis, but developed by Star Quail Games. So if you know games like Cave Story and things like that, you'll see them. But this is Tiny Barbarian DX, and essentially it's an action platformer with some combat involved. Very much draws on the whole Conan the Barbarian aesthetics and lore, and that's one of my favorite all-time like book series. I've got the collection. I know all the stories in and out. I absolutely love that stuff. Not huge on the Arnie films or even the latest films, and I really hope, you know, that show gets like its, you know, own turn in like the movies or TV series at some point. But what we got now is this game. So essentially you play as, the Tiny Barbarian, and you've got a series of levels to navigate. There's about 4 levels, which sounds really short, but it's like Castlevania where they've got stages. So you do like small stages within a level, and the levels are themed around a particular biome or story that you would see from the Chronicles of Conan. So one of the better known stories is called like the House of Rogues, and that's where Conan navigates like this incredible jungle, and he comes up across like this this fantastical creature, which is this intelligent grey ape, a little bit like King Kong, but like a bit more barbaric and dangerous. But what I really like about this game is how it integrates those novels and the love for that into the game. So in that level itself, you'll come across grey apes, and the boss is like that particular like grey ape, and he'll be throwing barrels like Donkey Kong from the Mario games, and you're like, oh, I see what you did there. You got to jump the barrels, got to beat other grey apes and get through it. It just plays really well. Like besides like all the fan service and Easter eggs, it just plays really well as an action platformer. So you have like your sword slashes, you have an elbow drop. You have a block move where the Barbarian just does like a muscle flex and bounces off like arrows and stuff like that. never gets old. It's a lot of fun. It's very cool. It just looks really good. The pacing's really good. It's got a generous checkpoint system, and it's got like pixel perfect like platforming. Like you have to jump, and people who know those games know what I mean by that. Like you have to jump and land on that particular block or grab that particular vine at the right time. So it's definitely challenging, but certainly not to the point that it's frustrating or off-putting for people who didn't grow up with those games. I also love it simply because it's got like a really diverse range of boss fights and levels as well. So one of the other levels takes a bit of a cue from, I think it's Super Castlevania on the Super Nintendo, where there's a lot of parallax scrolling and there's a spinning tower and you're climbing the spinning tower, and it's just, you feel all those vibes as you're playing it. And then the bosses themselves are incredible. They're taken again out of the Conan lore, but you find yourself like up against one of the early bosses is kind of like this moving fortress that spits out soldiers, and that's very much a throwback to the early Contra games. One of the first bosses in the Contra games, and then later on there'll be like an escape boss scene from a giant serpent, which again is kind of like classic Conan the Barbarian. And then there's also, like, I think any good indie game, there's a lot of unlockables. So, it's a game that you can pick up and play through and beat it within maybe 5-6 hours, but you want to replay it for score purposes. But also you get unlockables, which I won't spoil, but they're very cool. And there's a lot of, again, like kind of homage to the Conan like lore. Yeah, Johnny, have you heard of this game, or you're interested in like these kind of platformer pixel games or Conan the Barbarian?
I haven't heard of this one. I do like the style of gameplay, the sort of miniature style. It almost had me thinking of back in the day, ABC Good Game had their like cereal called Tiny Power.
Okay, yeah.
It was a comedic skit, but it was all in that kind of graphical style. All the characters were that size. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Very cool. Tim, how about, actually, Johnny, that reminds me, you would like the fact that there's a Castlevania reference in there where you break open bricks and, you get the chicken out of the wall.
Get your wall meat.
Get your wall meat to stay alive. So, I mean, it's a done deal from there. It's just like, I love it. I just love it when indie games do that. Tim, is this something that you've heard about or is of interest to you at all?
No, I haven't heard of this game or seen this game before, but
Yeah.
when you mentioned Conan as well as Conan, comics, graphic novels, and what have you, I went through a spell where I was reading some of them quite a few years ago. So this is like, you've got my curiosity piqued with this one.
Cool. Yeah, I'm into those as well. So you might quite like this one. Yeah, and again, very affordable, easy to pick up on sale. Yeah, it's just a really good action platformer game. All right, on to the next one. Johnny, what do we got for you?
So on the show previously, we've talked about some of the great games with superb stealth sections. We've talked about your Arkhams and your Perfect Darks and the like. But I don't think we've, to our shame, have touched upon possibly the greatest stealth game of all time or of recent times. And that is, of course, the Untitled Goose Game. Untitled Goose Game by Melbourne-based developer House put out this fantastic game in 2019 where you get to live be basically a goose, living his best life, causing mayhem, in an quaint English village, terrorizing the locals, going around and stealing their belongings. That's where the stealth comes in, because you obviously got to try avoid being caught by locals who will shoo you away if you're causing too much grief to them. I just think it's got such a beautiful art style. It's got this very kind of mellow piano playing in the back, so it's got a very simple sound design to it that just works for it. It's got so much charm. There's like you get like a to-do list of little bits of nuisance to undertake on the townsfolk, and they're all very highly amusing. Just being your being your best goose a-hole that you can be, really.
You can, just from the footage, they look so irritating.
Yeah, this
Oh,
goose
he
is
chucks the letter in the water.
it's just the worst, the worst. He's this goose is just the worst. But it's so much fun.
Yeah.
I was at a mutual friend's house last night, Jono, where I was playing this. My friend was just watching it for the first time, and he was just giggling all through the gameplay, the little bit of gameplay that we got through. Quick shout out for Melbourne-based viewers. Over the last couple of weeks, there's been an exhibition running at Acme where the development of the game was showcased. So you got to see houses, notes, and early demos of different stages. I think it's finishing up pretty soon, but if you're in Melbourne and want to check out the exhibition, head down to Acme at Federation Square in Melbourne. Definitely worth checking out. But yeah, it's a great game. Really cool that it's an Australian developer that's put this together. Really keen to see what they do next, because this is a gem.
Very cool. I just love just the animation of the goose itself, the waddling and the cheekiness and the quick flap as it tries to get away. Johnny, just with this game, it is so different to many other games. Is it level based? Is it a 1 hour experience? Or is it more just that game to pick up and have a bit of fun with and show your mates type thing?
It's a shorter experience, and it's kind of segmented, so you complete most of your to-do list in an area, and then a new sort of mission or task will pop up, and that will it's quite seamless how they've done it, because that task will open up the next area. So for example, in the first area, one of the missions you're given is to make the farmer hit his thumb with a hammer, and what that does, because he's hammering and it's got so much charm. He's hammering in a sign that says no, like it's a no geese. It's like the Ghostbuster symbol, but it's a goose behind it, and that opens up, that causes it's like a chain reaction thing, and that causes a gate to swing open, and then you can go into the next area, which is like the town, and then you can go terrorize like a shopkeep in the next area. So it's just it's weaved together really well. I wouldn't quite call it open world, but it's levels that are connected through your actions in a way. Yeah.
Cool. I like that. No, I like that. And Tim, what do you think of this game? Do you feel like getting down and get your silly goose style on? Is this one for you?
Look, I think that balancing out your gaming experience with something where you don't have to take things too seriously is probably the best way to go. And this certainly looks like it fits the bill. No pun intended. But
Awesome.
I definitely think I would get a kick out of this. Just seeing like the cheeky gameplay. I think I would very much enjoy something like this too.
Fantastic. Awesome. So that's Untitled Goose Game. If you haven't seen it, there's no excuse to skip on it now. It looks great. Great short experience. Tim, what do we got next for you?
Well, my thing seems it might be a little bit more of a serious one. I was actually looking for a platformer to play. Again, wanted to push the graphics card to its limits. But a friend in the Philippines, very good friend of mine, he suggested that I try Celeste. So Celeste is developed by Maddie Makes Games, a team of Maddie Thorson and Noel Berry. And my friend, he suggested that I might really enjoy the storyline. He didn't really say much else after that. But like in summary, you play a character named Madeline, and you're at Celeste Mountain. And after a brief tutorial, which guides you on the movement style, so you can run, you can do jumps, you can do a dash, you can do the dash in the air as well. Your character then sets about trying to reach the summit. very, very simple gameplay mechanics. And after getting my head around that, I felt kind of fooled at one point. I was not prepared for the type of gameplay that would follow. I was messaging my friend going, dude, I don't know what you've recommended to me, but this is quite difficult. But I honestly, I felt that this is probably one of the games that has really brought me back into that retro style. It's wonderful, gorgeously pixelated. I do enjoy the tight gaming mechanics. It's considered a precision platformer. And like when I was doing some other reading, apparently it's considered to be one of the more difficult games out there. And on that list, this is just a brief A-side, but a friend of mine, he used to play one of the games on that list called Super Meat Boy.
Oh yeah,
and when I used to see him just dying through each level multiple times, I'm like, why are you doing this to yourself, man?
It's a meat grinder, literally.
Yeah, exactly. And like here I am now playing a game that's probably similar to that. With the first section, like you sort of get your head around it, and then you start seeing that there are, it's going to be difficult to navigate your way through, but it's never difficult or in the sense that it could be unfair. Like everything in this it might be considered hard, but I think the gameplay is definitely very fair. Once you get your head around the navigation and the mechanics, you'll almost always realize that there is going to be a pathway that you do have to follow. You just really have to nail those jumps. And I think being able to play for short spurts really fits in with my lifestyle. So I play through a few sections of the game and just think, like that's enough for the day. And like for every achievement you feel, you just want to keep pushing further and further ahead.
Yeah, I remember when this game came out, and that bit about short bursts made it really quite popular on the Nintendo Switch. So it was advertised heavily on there in the indie showcases. I think because that appealed to like the gamers for that market, like that group, but also just the handheld option and in that trickery of what you're saying where you don't know how hard it is, and like when someone hears a game's hard, it's often easy to be put off and go, I just don't have time, I don't want to. But it sounds like, Tim, this is the kind of game that if it is hard, if the art style and there's a story, quite a meaningful story underneath it too, appeals to you, you can pick it up and play it. Johnny, have you heard of this one? Is this one for you?
Yeah, this has been on the backlog. It's a style of game that I really enjoy, and been sort of meaning to get around to it, but haven't quite got there yet because too many other games. But it's one that I've been meaning to check out.
Yeah, absolutely. No, so that's Celeste. If you want a pixel perfect platformer, that's probably the best game of the bunch to go for that. Not necessarily combat, but avoiding every single obstacle and getting your way through to the story. It looks awesome. Well, going from hardish games to probably what I would call the easiest games on one of the easiest games on our list. So when we were planning this episode, I was going to do another game called Kingdom 2 Crown, but I just kept coming back to this game because I felt like a lot of people don't know what it is, and I think it needs more love out there, and I really enjoy my time with it. So this game is called Sayonara Wild Hearts, and it was actually showcased in a Game Awards trailer, I think back in 2018 or 2019. It was one of the few Nintendo games that was advertised, the Switch games that was advertised at the time when they did join the Game Awards. Like, and you see them put out their stuff, and I thought, I'll give it a try. It's hard to describe what this game is, but it's a music rhythm game, which is usually not my jam at all. But I just wanted to try something different, and I'm sure glad that I did because it's a wonderful game on a lot of different levels. So essentially, it's got a very minimalist story, and you can see, just watching the footage, like it uses 3 or 4 colors perfectly to create this really gorgeous neon look to it that really sucks you in as a player. You play as a girl who had her heart broken, and it's not a super deep story, and it's not the kind of game where you need to put a lot of it brain power in that sense, and it just eases you in perfectly. essentially what you're doing is you're going through a series of levels. There's about 20, and you'll have like this gorgeous kind of like pop trance kind of house. It's a bit of a mix. Like music track playing in the background, and you need to navigate through the levels. Very simple button use, like moving left or right across different pathways, or timing a button press at a specific time. And again, like I'm not someone who plays games like Just Dance or even Thumper, but this game really just got me when I didn't really expect it would, because it just looks so good, and it just constantly pulls you in every second of the game. Like the camera will shift. So for example, the very first level, like you're on a skateboard and you're just skating down a like a road, like very simple look to it, trying to collect hearts, and then the camera will shift, and it just keeps like, you feel like you're on like a bit of a roller coaster, but it's also quite serene feeling when you play in that sense. So really enjoyable, and the levels only last about a minute or two each. So very much like, I would recommend this as like someone who's new to indie games, first of all, but also just new to games. Like I'm really looking forward to when my daughter's old enough to play games and going, try this out, because I think you might be interested in this. It's just got like a very approachable vibe to it. And then all the levels are, of course, very, very different. So later on, one of the levels has you like riding on a motorbike at top speed, and all this, like you'll be chasing down these bandits and taking them on one at a time, and it will just pause and they'll be throwing fireballs at you. But it's not your typical kind of action game. It's more, music, rhythm, button press, and you just, I feel like your connection to the screen in this game is better than what many games do. Like you just feel like you're in it in many ways. And then later on, you play like a completely different game, which is a bit like a game called Res that some people might be aware of, where you're moving through like these kind of virtual worlds. On the screen, you just saw like the character flying through the pit, which is something that happens in that level with the motorbike. It just, the ground opens up and you're flying. Feels very wondrous. But this is like, there are a lot of great indie games out there, and I just go like, I really liked Sayonara Wild Hearts, but I don't know if people know about it. So, Tim, is this something that might appeal to you at all? Have you ever seen or heard of this game, or not really?
No, I hadn't heard of this game, but just looking at the art style, it looks amazing. I do have to say, like the shifts in the different types of sort of gameplay that it introduces, or different mechanics that it introduces, it looks very diverse.
Yeah.
It does look like it can be, like something very addictive, especially if it has something rhythm based. I would probably give this a go. Cool. Down the track.
Cool, Johnny. What did you think?
It stokes my envy of people who are good at rhythm games, because I do not belong to that group, that exclusive group. As much as I wish I would be good at rhythm games. It does look pretty cool, and it's got a interesting kind of stylized design.
And look, I would add to that, like, this is definitely the rhythm game that is for people who are not into them. Like, you might find the first couple of levels are a lot more easier and user-friendly and get something out of it, but it does ramp up. Like, it does hook you in a bit like Celeste does, and you're like suddenly up against harder challenges. But it's a very forgiving game in that sense. Yeah. Johnny, so what is your final one for today's show?
So I thought I had to mention another 2019 released Cadence of Hyrule, Crypt of the Necrodancer. Now, this is a rhythm game developed by Brace Yourself Games, which is a Vancouver-based studio. And it's actually a really cool adaptation of the top-down Zelda games, and it's like published by Nintendo. So it's an indie developer, but they got to use the Zelda license and publish it for Nintendo Switch. And despite being terrible at rhythm games, I absolutely adore the art style, the gameplay mechanics, and what's kind of nice about this is it's very kind to people like me who are not great at rhythm games, and you can play it in what's called fixed beat mode, where you sort of end up playing it more like a traditional top-down Zelda. But yeah, having said that, I think the appeal of it for most would be the rhythm style based combat. So when you time your attacks based to the beat, you'll inflict a lot more damage on the enemies, and you'll work your way through the game at a more exciting pace. So this is one I had a go at a couple of years ago when it first came out. Just really liked it visually. Was for a long time I hadn't realized that it was actually developed by an indie studio. It was something I'd been playing I think I'd probably just assumed it was something that Nintendo developed themselves, but obviously no, it's part of that Crypt of the Necrodancer franchise, and they've just they've done a bit of a crossover with the Zelda universe.
Yeah, I remember when this was announced, and it was just so cool to be like, oh, Nintendo's actually going to license out one of their most beloved franchises of all time to an indie developer and try and reach that market. But also the developer has created like something that really fuses the sense of like Zelda with Crypt of the Necrodancer. I've only played the demo of this. I can't speak at length about it, but from my experience, and I'm not into these kind of games as much, but I think that Zelda, having a new Zelda story and seeing all the like Zelda Easter eggs and going, oh yeah, that's there, being able to play as Zelda herself, which is not a common thing in a lot of the games, is also a huge plus. It's quite an appealing thing. How about you, Tim? Are you into the Zelda games, and does this kind of appeal to you from that perspective?
Look, the last one that I played was A Link to the Past, actually. So nice. It was definitely like a highlight of Super Nintendo before. I don't know why I stopped playing it, so I never finished that one. But I feel like that's one that I would have to go back to. But yeah, like seeing this particular look for the games, it definitely brings back those sorts of memories. I'm with you, Johnny. I'm terrible with beat-based rhythm games. Like we had a DJ Hero here that never got played because I couldn't play it.
You just got to call it sometimes, don't you?
That's it. Like I know where my weaknesses lie. But look, if ever I get a chance, yeah, I would be happy to give something like this a go.
Awesome.
And the tunes are awesome, like the adaptation of all the classic Zelda themes and like dungeon themes and all that is just like chef's kiss. It's just done so well.
Yeah, definitely a game for the fans. And there's a demo out on the eShop too, so if you're not sure, just give it a go and then go on and pick it up if it's your thing. All right, Tim, what's your final game for today's episode?
All right, final game for today for me. So I had been looking for some side-scrolling shooters when I got the PC, and Steam always has some brilliant sales. So initially I'd picked out Hunt Down, so I'd been playing through that. That was a quick favorite of mine. Actually, it emerged as like an early favorite, but there was one that I'd played earlier called Broforce from that selection of games. And Broforce, look, I think like it's in the conversation, at least for me, like for being like just as fun a side-scrolling shooter as Hunt Down. The first playthrough I played through on normal mode, and like it wasn't very challenging. It was definitely like quite relaxing. I felt more of it being it was generous in what it would in how it would support you to play through the game. I've recently completed a playthrough on hard mode, and this game has been the reason for many late nights for me.
There's a lot of explosions going on here. I actually can't even tell what's going on. There's pixels blowing up left, right, and center. What is going on, Tim?
Look, I'm such a big, tragic, diehard fan of 80s and 90s action films. So, with Broforce, you get to see little and play with little pixelated versions of, characters from films like Commando, or you get to play with characters from First Blood, Die Hard even. Yeah. It was developed by Free Lives and published by Devolver Digital. And the Broforce itself is this team of almost every one of those possible action heroes, and they're trying to bring freedom to every corner of the globe. The Steam description is probably the best summary, saying that it's an ode to freedom, putting you in control of an underfunded, overpowered paramilitary organization dealing exclusively in excessive force.
That's all those movies combined, isn't it?
Pretty much. So, like any of those action movie tropes that you're familiar with, this game is that dialed up to 11. The violence is comical. Enemies explode into pixelated chunks of meat. But I think what I loved the most would have to be the little details that the developers had put into each of the bros attacks. So each of them are called bros, and their names have bro inserted into it. So you've got Ram Bro, Brominator. Then there's Demolition Bro, to name a few. But like in terms of their attacks, what I really dug was, so as the Broad from Kill Bill, she slices through everyone with a katana, but her limited special attack is the 5-point palm heart exploding technique from the films.
Oh, sold.
So as soon as you tap someone with that, they fly backwards and they just explode. Then you've got Van Damme's Time Cop. You've got Time Bro, and there's a very, very memorable level where you have to use his special ability, which is to slow down time. Really tight platforming throughout that particular special level, and like that was one of the things that really just sort of stood out as being super memorable for me. The Brodator has a special where it goes cloak camouflage mode, while they then target everyone with its shoulder-mounted cannon. If you get tagged, and the thing is, you will die an incredible amount in this game. Like,
looks like everyone dies quite a lot every second of the game, Tim.
the bros are so fragile in this game, which I think like is a tongue-in-cheek reference to like maybe like their masculinity is actually quite fragile. But look, the Predator bro, when it dies, it even has the self-destruct from the film.
Oh, that's gold.
So like, I'm thinking like, just let me start the level again. No, it has to run through the countdown timer until it actually self-destructs.
I'm sold.
And look, John, I think you're really going to like that they've managed to bring in at least a character from one of your favorite franchises, Mortal Kombat.
Oh, wow.
So they've got their own take on Raiden, who's been redubbed as Broden.
Of course he has. Of course he has.
So his melee move is an uppercut, which takes off the head of the opponent. And they've also given his special ability of doing the Superman attack, complete with the unintelligible thing that he yells out.
Yeah, that's. Just give me a second. I need to go download it. I'm out. I'm done. You guys carry the show. This is amazing. See you guys.
I think this game would be, because it actually does have multiplayer. I think this game would be incredible as a multiplayer game.
Awesome.
Just everything in it is destructible. Again, you've got so many different tropes in it. Like you'll just explode everything around you. If you need to make a tunnel, you'll just shoot your way through the earth to make it to the other side of things. The only things that I probably would have liked to see would be maybe some more inventive traps. Like, I don't know if like you could trigger like trapdoors somehow. That'd be really fun. The melee is a little bit iffy. Like, if you're too close to an opponent, I found that you'll sometimes throw them and it's like, oh no, I really wanted the Raiden special uppercut, or I wanted the Broniversal Soldier to do a double splits kick in the air or something like that. Also, like, you've got 2 Chuck Norris inspired characters, but no Steven Seagal inspired one. I kind of felt that was, that was a criminal miss from them. But like, again, just having referenced it earlier, I have played through it on hard mode already. I'm now currently trying to play through it on the Iron Bro sort of survival mode. And, it actually makes the game feel very, very different. So like in the normal or hard modes, you could just run and gun, like spray and pray type thing. Whereas in the Iron Bro mode, you've got a limited number of lives, or bros as it is, and like once they die, that's it. And once you deplete your lives, that's it. Your gameplay session is over. So you have to be a little bit more strategic. So I think that's that's a really fun way that they've made the game, retain some replayability. So yeah, it's been quite fun, and I think the level design is top notch, and again, pixelated aesthetic is very, very appealing to me.
Yeah, no, it looks like a complete package there. Like, if you watch any of those movies, something you'd love. Johnny, I see you chuckling along. Like, what do you think of Broforce? Is it one for you? Do you
I
want to
think
play as RoboCop?
I think so. I think so. I think that's a must.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've heard about this game a few times. I really appreciate you going through all that detail, actually, Tim, with the special moves, because I didn't know that they're all individualized in that way. So to hear that kind of adds a lot of value to the appeal of this game for me. I just remember like looking at a more recent trailer beyond the one that we've got playing here, and they talk about like new characters and new scenes and all this stuff, and they're like Xenobro or Zebra or whatever. I'm like, I'm in. Like, if I can play Xenobro, like, I'm done. Like, lock me in. So no, it looks like just a ridiculously good time. And I just can see everyone having fits of laughter in multiplayer, in particular with this. All right, so we are running out of time, people of Perth and beyond. So I'll whiz through our final one. And look, it can't match the brilliance of Broforce. It just can't. It's actually quite a similar game to Broforce. My final pick for the episode is a game called Blazing Chrome, and that's developed by Joy Masher Games, who have done games like Oniken and Odalis, some really old school, like quite hardcore games that reflects the games they're based off. This one is very much just comes from the Contra template. So it was probably considered as like one of the bigger, better games when it came out, because when it was released, it definitely has like the most Contra-like appeal, but like in the form of a modern indie. And for those of you who aren't aware of what those games are, essentially it's a 1 or 2 player game, run and gun, left to the right of the screen often, although there might be levels where like there's an elevator moving up or down. And it's very much like a bullet hell type game where you got to hold the attack button and get your way through these levels. There are explosions everywhere. Your character is very fragile, kind of like in Broforce. You might have a couple of hits and then you die. But for me, what made this game, and this is when I looked at all the hours I've clocked up on indie games, this one I've probably got the most, even though it's a short game with like a limited number of levels, is it's very easy, like just to pick up after coming off like a huge game and going, oh, I just want a couple of rounds of this. And I realize I've been doing that for years now, so it would have been criminal to not mention this one. But yeah, it's based in a post-apocalyptic setting. I'm not even going to describe the characters. You can guess what the kind of like tropes are there, like, but it has everything you'd expect from like a modern Contra, like the variety of guns, the kind of the whole screen-based level boss fights that are exciting, but also really tense and challenging, and you tend to die 2 or 3 or 5 times before you beat them. There's a couple of vehicle sections, like a speeder bike section, probably not as punishing as the one that Johnny was talking about. The mech section is far better. I guess with these kind of games, when you have multiple hits, you always just relax a little bit. Not that this is a relaxing game. But yeah, look, the highlight for me is like the boss fights. We saw briefly a little spider creature. Like there's this awesome boss. And those of you who have played like those old Contra games, it's a mix of cybernetic and kind of alien. And there is this massive cybernetic alien thing that you're in like the mouth of, reaching out with tentacles. And it's like the old school games of yore where you beat the boss, but then they evolve into the next horrible thing that just you're like, I barely survived this. Like, how the hell am I going to get through the next stage? And it's that kind of thing. And then it morphs into like this spider machine comes out and starts jumping on you really quick. This is absolute bullshit. Like the developers knew they were like trolling me when they created this game, but that's how these games work. You kind of do learn the patterns, and you do learn which guns you want to get, like a grenade launcher over a laser, for example, to get your way through a level. But look, it's heaps of fun. There are some really cool unlockables, including, and it's not really a spoil to say this, like extra characters that have a different dynamic to the original 2 that you can choose from. They have like short range weapons that are more powerful and a double jump dash type thing, which really changes the way the game plays, which I think is really clever, because that's something we saw Nintendo do with the Mario games, when you saw like Luigi added when he was jumping taller and he was a bit slipperier, but it does change the whole way the game feels, and that's something you want as a player in terms of replayability. But Tim, are you like, have you heard of this game? Are you into like these these kind of Contra types? Looks like we've lost Tim briefly there, his mic. But Johnny, how about you? Like,
I was just going to say this is just a love letter to Contra games on the Super Nintendo, isn't it?
yeah,
You can tell the makers of this game just loved Contra on the Super Nintendo, and they've made their own version in that genre, which is cool.
Yeah, and that's exactly what it is. And it's more forgiving. Like, I've gone back and played the old Contra collection. I've picked up that Capcom collection that they released quite a while ago, and I kind of feel like, oh, I like this little kind of modern take on it. Like, graphically, it looks very similar, but it's just got a couple of bells and whistles that you wouldn't have seen in those games back in the day. So that's the last one we've got for this episode. Blazing Chrome, go check it out. There's a bit of an assortment there. Tim, not sure if we've lost you. Can we hear you?
No,
We've got you. He's back.
I think I've got it. There is the mute button, which is always going to be the death of me in every single meeting that I use this mic.
We all do that. You sort of finger creeps over. I mean, I do mute our guests from time to time, or just like kick them out. But no, look, it's been awesome having you on the show, Tim. Really appreciate like your depth of knowledge and the games you've been playing, games that I had heard about but not seen. So I think we've covered quite a good range of games. Just from the bunch today, what would you say your favorite pick among the 9 was that you saw or you thought was most interesting to try that you hadn't tried?
Oh man, look, I think the Blazing Chrome that you just mentioned was probably going to be the favorite. I am looking for another Contra style game to play. You know, like because sadly I don't have a Switch right now, so you know, like I think the more I talk to you guys, the more I'm probably thinking I'm probably going to line up for a Switch 2 when it comes out. But that definitely sounds very good. And sorry, forgive me if I've gotten the name wrong with the previous recommendation, but Jay and Silent Bob.
More Brawl. Yeah.
I think that's also a contender because I do love the View Askew universe. You know, that was a bunch of movies that I grew up wanting to be able to, and you know, was quoting probably way too much at some point. But yeah, that also does look like something, you know, like everything that Johnny raised with that, it appeals to someone like me. You know, I do love a good beat 'em up, but you know, like you guys were saying, like some of these beat 'em up games, and even like something like Broforce would probably be an even better experience if it were shared and played multiplayer.
Yeah, absolutely. Johnny, how about you? Was there a game that I talked about or Tim talked about that stood out to you that you think would be interesting?
It's great to be reminded about Celeste because I remember when that came out, I thought, oh, this looks amazing. I've got to try this. And then as tends to happen, they think games fall into the backlog and you don't get to them. But yeah, that and also Broforce. Broforce looks hilarious. They're like hilarious fun. So those two stand out for me.
Absolutely. Yeah, it'd have to be Broforce for me. Like, I've just seen that game over years, but hearing you talk about it, Tim, is, oh, yes, no, it looks, what am I doing? Got to go get it. But look, that's all we have time for, people of Perth and beyond. Thanks for joining us on today's show. Just a quick reminder to like and subscribe if you like what we do, let your friends know, all that kind of thing. There are a couple of indie games there's one mentioned today and one from a previous episode where we have articles on the website that you can read more about. So that's perthgamingcrew.com, and we also have the Insta page, so check that out too. But keep an eye out for our next episode in a couple of weeks' time. Tim, great to have you as a guest. Thanks for coming along.
Thanks for having me, guys. I really enjoyed my time.
Awesome. And Johnny, as always, thanks for being there with me.
Always welcome, John. And thanks, Tim, for being our first guest of 2025.
Absolutely. So yeah, if you are interested in being a guest, do hit us up. We've got Ludley coming back for our next episode. And for those of you who've seen previous episodes, you'll see we'll be all into just keep an eye on what's coming up. But thanks for joining us, people of Perth and beyond. Have a great rest of the weekend. That's us for now. Catch you later.